I posted a TikTok that got 19,000 views, and then a few months later I posted the exact same video, but this time applied a few principles that I'm going to be teaching in this video, and it got almost 5 million views. Same video, just a few small tweaks. So what made the difference? Let's talk about it. Why are your Instagram Reels or TikToks not getting views? Now, each social media platform will have its differences in formatting and algorithms, but the basic principles that make a piece of content go viral are all the same. And I want to share with you 10 of those principles in this video. But first, why? Why should you care about getting views on and building a following on Instagram or TikTok for yourself or for a video client? In short, because more traffic, more followers equals more people to market to, which ultimately will allow you or your client to make more money in your business. And if we're being honest, that's the end game for most creators and businesses, is to make a living off of that content. So if you want to grow your business or be a capable marketer to grow other businesses, you'll want to learn and apply these principles. So let's dive in. Our first and most important tip is content is king. The first and main reason why your Reels or TikToks don't get views is that your content isn't relatable, relevant, or shareable. The rest of my tips in this video won't do you much good if the content of your video just doesn't appeal to anyone. So let's give you a few examples of how to do each of these. First, relatable. Can people relate to your content? A good example of relatable content in the filmmaking space specifically is Chris Hua. One of his most viewed reels as of late is him posing a relatable question. So you want to get into photography? He then shocks you with his answer, don't do it, and then gives you all the relatable reasons about how expensive it is, how many endless pieces of gear you have to buy, how when you post on Instagram you don't get any views, and eventually you get one awesome photo and it makes it all worth it. Now these are all examples of relatable scenarios. As someone watching this, you think, oh man, he's describing my experiences. And because he described my experiences, I have friends that have those experiences that I want to share this with that can also relate to these scenarios. So you hit the share button. So Chris takes that desire to get into photography, which is a relatable desire that many people have, and then he lists a bunch of relatable experiences, and that makes it shareable. So he hits 2 of those 3 factors really well, and that's why this post got a lot of shares and views. Now, Chris is more focused on comedic sketches and posing relatable questions and scenarios, but comedy may not be your strength, so let's look at Sam Colder, who focuses more on shareability. One of his most viewed reels at 3 million views is him cliff jumping and an amazing tracking shot from an FPV drone. Now, this activity is hardly relatable to most regular people, but it is shocking. Both the activity and the camera movement are shockingly cool, and that shock factor makes things shareable. You watch this and you think, oh man, I gotta show my buddy how cool this shot is. And if you look a few weeks earlier, he basically posted the exact same clip, except this one only had 500,000 views, which shows that the activity was still shocking enough to get a good amount of views. But when he then added some epic music and epic tracking camera movement, suddenly the shareability went way up. So as you're creating content for yourself or clients, ask yourself the question, would I share this with someone I know? If the answer is no, then think, how can we spice this up to add some more shock or wow factor to make it more shareable? The last example we'll look at is my account on Full-Time Filmmaker. Now, I don't put much focus on Instagram and TikTok content, so my numbers aren't going to look as good as these other guys I've mentioned, but my brand focuses more on relevant pieces of gear. Unboxing videos generally perform better than my tutorial content because everyone unboxes products, so it's a relatable activity. But beyond that, when I choose to unbox a piece of camera gear that recently came out, that makes it relevant. Relevance means it's trending. It's in the news, it's new, it's novel. When you can post about something that people are already talking about, it will catch their eye because it's relevant to them. My most viewed unboxing video was surprisingly this lens cap because not only was it new, but it was unique, interesting, novel, and unusual. So the goal when creating any content, Instagram and TikTok content included, is to try and check off all 3 of these boxes. This video of mine was relatable because unboxing products is a relatable activity and camera gear is relatable to my specific audience. And then this lens cap was new and novel, so it was relevant. And then because it was unique and different, it had a wow or shock factor, which made it shareable. Now, one question I'll answer here is, how similar do each of your reels need to be style-wise? And my answer is, you can do as many styles as you can while still being relevant to your audience. If you can do some comedy sketches, crazy cool cinematic montages, and unboxing videos and tutorials while still making them all relevant to your audience of filmmakers, then you should. And I would recommend having a variety of styles of content so you don't pigeonhole yourself into only being able to do one type of video. Just make sure that they remain relevant to your audience. Well, let's move on to our next tip, and that is keep it concise. A big question I get asked on this topic is how long should my reels be? And vaguely the answer is as long as you can keep someone's attention for. Generally, the algorithms will favor shorter content like 5 to 10 seconds, but that doesn't mean longer form content can't be shareable. I recently started a new faith-based account called True Millennials, and even though most of my reels aren't concise at all, one of my 4-minute reels got over 300,000 views, and I just barely started this account. So that shows you a couple of things. That 1, you don't need a large following to catch hold of Instagram or TikTok's algorithms, but 2, it also shows you that length doesn't necessarily matter. Instagram specifically has a 90-second limit on their reels, but they recently changed posts that can be up to 15 minutes long to also show up in the reel feeds, even if it's longer than 90 seconds. So even if it's longer than 90 seconds, it still has the same shareability as a reel. That having been said, our attention spans are short, so generally speaking, the shorter the better. Sam Colder could have made a cinematic intro to his cliff jumping shot, but by instantly getting to the good part, I think it increased the amount of people willing to watch and share, and that brings me to our next tip, the hook. The first 3 seconds is the most important part of your video. As people are scrolling through Instagram or TikTok, you have about 3 seconds to capture their attention to hook them into watching the rest. Mr. Beast is one of the masters at creating engaging hooks. His primary way of doing this is by posing a relatable question right out of the gates or giving a quick summary of what the video is about right at the beginning. Again, if your question isn't relatable or content isn't relatable, then it won't matter if you give a quick summary. If you're telling them about something that they're not interested in, they still won't watch. But as you're brainstorming content and as you're in the editing room, think, what can I do in the first few seconds of this video to get people hooked? I did that with this video you're watching right now. I picked out what I felt was the most shocking, most engaging part of this video, and I put a little teaser at the beginning to hook you in to get you interested in learning more. So if you have a 1-minute video, for example, I'd put the most engaging clip, my most shocking moment, or the most relatable clip at the very beginning. But moving on to our next tip, and that is the 10-second rule. Originally, I made this rule up about 7 years ago. Since then, attention spans have diminished, so we'll update it and call it the 5-second rule. But basically what it means is don't let more than 5 seconds go by without changing visually what your audience is looking at. The first step is to hook their attention. The second step is to retain their attention throughout the whole video. This can be done through captions or on-screen text, or it can be done with changing camera angles or punching in on the existing angle. But probably the most engaging option is to add B-roll or video clips that visually show what you're audibly hearing. This tip is more relevant to talking heads like this, but the rule applies to any kind of edit. Now, ideally, you have your own B-roll that you've shot, but if you don't have any B-roll of the subject matter at hand, then just use some stock footage. The site I use for all my stock footage is Storyblocks, and it doesn't have to be exactly every 5 to 10 seconds. That's not the point. Just keep the edits engaging. Keep your audience on their toes by giving them something new to look at as often as possible. But moving on to our next tip, and that is to add value rather than ask for value. Let me point out one of the biggest mistakes I see content creators make on social media in general, and that is that they post about themselves. Newsflash, no one cares about you until they know how much you care about them, until you add value to their lives. That could be in the form of entertainment, or giving them news updates, educating them, or it could be making them laugh, making them feel good about themselves, inspiring them. But this is why so many podcasts and vlogs fail out of the gates, because most vlogs and podcasts are centered around me and my life. Hi, welcome to my podcast. Today we're going to talk about me. No one cares. Peter McKinnon tried to start a vlog back in the day, and no one really cared about his daily life until he started adding value to their lives through tutorials and education. Now, it helps that he's also super entertaining, so he adds value in that way as well, but the bigger value that exploded his channel was his focus on educating others. So ask yourself that question when brainstorming what kind of content to create. Is this going to add value to other people's lives? And if you can feel their needs, they will naturally want to like you and follow you and buy your stuff. It's the law of reciprocity. Okay, next tip is humans connect with real humans, not with brands or organizations. This is a tough one for me personally personally, and for many videographers and filmmakers in general, because we usually like to be behind the camera. We don't like putting ourselves on camera. Unfortunately though, in today's landscape of social media, it favors the extrovert, favors those willing to put their face on a camera. Now, of course, it is possible to create successful Reels and TikTok content without putting your face on camera, but I encourage every creator, even if you are a behind the scenes camera person, to build your personal brand by including behind the scenes shots of yourself. Talk to your audience on camera when it makes sense. Not only will this help you better connect with your audience, but it will attract more video clients as well, as they get a feel for who you are as a person, since they're hiring you to work with you, not just buying a final video product from you. And on this note, I'll add that people connect better to you when you are being real, authentic, organic, unscripted. Again, I'm not great at this because I script a lot of my content, but for example, that's why such a popular format you'll see in Reels and TikToks is a clip of two people talking to each other in podcast format, because two people having a real unscripted dialogue comes across so much more natural and real and organic than someone talking to a camera in a monologue. In order to monologue, the person has to be insanely talented as a communicator, which some people are, but for those of us who aren't, dialogue with another human can help it feel a lot more real and natural. I've even seen some people fake a dialogue and act like they're talking to someone off camera, even though it's just them talking to themselves. I don't recommend that in particular, but where possible, I recommend being as real and unscripted as possible to come across as more human as humans connect with real humans. Moving on to our next tip though, is to keep up to date with trends and trending audio. Yes, it is possible to succeed on Instagram and TikTok without ever jumping on a trend or ever using a trending audio, but of course, the algorithms will work in your favor if you can include some trending audio, and your content will instantly fall into the relevant category if you're jumping on a video style or song that is trending. This is one of the easiest ways to grow from nothing. An example of this on our TikTok page at Full-Time Filmmaker was a 1-minute clip from one of my tutorials showing the difference in focal lengths. So if you're shooting at too wide of a focal length, the face looks too skinny and pulled back, and it did okay. It had 19,000 views, but we didn't use any music, just the clip. Then a couple months later, we posted the exact same video, except this time we cut out my voice and instead put the stupid Siri voice as the voiceover, because at that time that was a very trendy thing to do. She just delivered one line, and we put a caption on the screen and put it to a song that was trending at the time. And we also followed my second tip and chopped it down to just 10 seconds to make it more concise.
This is how different focal lengths affect how you look.
I've been dancing in my room, swaying my feet, trying to...
And what do you know? It got 5 million views. 19,000 versus 5 million. And using the trendy Siri voice and the trendy audio was a big part of that difference. Now, don't feel like you have to jump on trends. If you can naturally include some trends in your content, then great, but don't force it. I have seen people, though, that will post multiple variations of the same edit, each one with a different hook and different music and different lengths, until they get one of them to take off, and then they'll delete the other variations. But as far as editing to trending music, in order to download a trending song from Instagram, I use the app Preview. It is a paid app. There are some free options out there like Snap Insta, but who knows if it's a safe site to use or not. But using instructions that I'll link below, you can download songs from Instagram, or on TikTok, it's really easy. You just long press and save. And then you bring it into your editor, edit to it, and then mute the song before exporting. Then bring your video into TikTok or Instagram, pick the trending song, and then choose the volume level you want, and then post it. Or you could export with the song embedded into your video, and TikTok or Instagram will usually recognize the song and tag it, but if it doesn't recognize it and thinks it's original audio, then you'll need to do the previous option that I mentioned. Now, if you have a business account, sometimes it won't let you use certain trending music, so in that case, you're out of luck, you won't be able to use them due to copyright issues. But moving on to our next tip, which is specific to talking head content like this, is don't neglect lighting and audio. A lot of shareable content these days can be done from a smartphone camera, and I think that's fine as far as video quality goes. Even the audio can be usable from a smartphone as long as you're close enough to the camera. But if you're doing anything where you're not right next to the camera, then use a microphone. It will make your videos feel so much higher quality, I promise. And a few lav mic options I recommend in different price ranges would be first the FTF Gear Lav Mic, which is $30. That's your cheapest option, and it is wired. The biggest downside of these cheaper mics plugged into a phone is that you can't adjust the volume level, so you can't talk too loud or else it's going to distort. Your next step up is something like a ceramic lav mic that can plug straight into your iPhone, and it has a wireless transmitter, and this one costs about $140 but does give you some gain control. And then I also own a DJI lav mic, which is a nicer version of the ceramic lav mic that comes in at $300, and I'll show you now the difference between the audio in each of those. All right, so this is what your audio sounds like just coming from the iPhone itself. Usable, fine, but now. And this is what your audio is going to sound like with the FTF Gear mic, nice and cheap, $30. Next, you've got this ceramic lav mic that you can either talk into this or you can talk into a microphone. This is going to be wireless that transmits to it so you can have more freedom. And then you have your DJI lav mic that just comes with this. You can plug a mic into it but doesn't come with one. And this is going to give you the most control over your gain levels just coming from the iPhone itself with the FTF Gear mic, the ceramic lav mic, and then you have your DJI lav mic. It's also become trendy to hold the microphones in your hand, and the only reason I can think this makes sense to do is to have a better proximity effect for less reverb and clearer audio, but this can also clip right here and get pretty good audio too. I think it's kind of a dumb trend, but anyway. And we'll talk about studio mics in another video I have coming out talking about podcasting. But on the lighting side, again, you can get by with a cheap camera as long as your lighting looks decent. The free option, of course, is plop yourself next to a window, or you can pick up a ring light for less than $100, or take it a little bit more serious and get something like an Amaron 60D plus a soft dome for around $200 total. But with just a couple $100 in audio and lighting gear, your videos are going to look and sound much higher quality. Watch me now deliver the same line with good lighting and good audio versus bad lighting and bad audio, and tell me which one you'd be more likely to stop and listen to. Stop scrolling and listen to what I have to say. I desperately need your attention. Stop scrolling and listen to what I have to say. I desperately need your attention. But moving on now to our next tip, that is captions or on-screen text. Watch that same video, but now with captions added. Stop scrolling and listen to what I have to say. I desperately need your attention. Captions or subtitles are a growing necessity on short-form content. It makes content much more engaging and easier to consume as you can both hear audibly and see visually what's being said. This also makes the content more shareable across other languages, as some people may be able to read your language better than they can understand it. Personally, I use Adobe Premiere Pro for most of my posts to auto-generate all my captions, and I did a tutorial on Adobe's YouTube channel that I'll link below on how to generate those captions. But you can also use phone apps if you don't have Premiere Pro. I've used the app Captions, and I've really liked using that. But captions are a great way to do what we mentioned in the 5-second rule tip, and that is to keep your audience engaged and retain their attention better throughout the entire video. And even if there's no talking in your video, by throwing on some text on your video at the beginning, for example, it can act like a hook to add anticipation and to tell the viewer what they can expect to see happening later on. And now moving on to our last tip, number 10, is aspect ratio and export settings. This tip pains me, but sadly, vertical 9:16 content will typically perform better as it takes up the full use of the screen and looks more organic, like you shot it on your phone vertically. If I've shot something in 16:9, I will either just scale in to fit a vertical frame, or if too much of my subject is being cut off, then I'll just put a title on top and some subtitles below to utilize the space better. But ideally, the video itself is taking up the full vertical frame, so you'll want to keep that in mind when framing your shots. It is possible to film horizontally, and as long as you keep your vertical cropping in mind, you can frame yourself in a way that can work for both. If you want to get real fancy with it though, you could shoot 2 cameras at the same time, one horizontal and one vertical, or some cameras like the DJI Action 3 or GoPro 11 are now coming out with the ability to film in 4:3 aspect ratios or even 8:7 aspect ratios on the GoPro, which makes them much easier to crop and post for both aspect ratios. And hopefully all cameras will give you that aspect ratio option in the future. But when I edit together content that I'm delivering for both YouTube horizontal and Instagram vertical, I'll first do the edit vertically in a 1080x1920 sequence. I'll then copy my whole timeline and paste it into a new horizontal 1920x1080 timeline, and then I'll just reframe the clips to fit the horizontal aspect ratio and adjust the captions as needed. Usually it only takes me about a half hour to reformat the entire video from one to the other. Keep in mind though, with your your vertical edits that part of your frame is going to be cluttered with Instagram or TikTok details like likes, comments, shares, and the caption below. So I actually have a PNG template that I made that I'll link below that you can download for free that you can overlay while you're editing to ensure that none of the important captions or important imagery is clashing. Also keep in mind on certain phones like the newer iPhones, when you click into an Instagram reel or on TikTok, it actually crops your video even slightly skinnier than 9:16 aspect ratio. So again, if you use my PNG overlay, you can see exactly where stuff gets cut off on these red lines. On this note, I get a lot of questions about the best export settings for Instagram and TikTok. How do you keep the videos from getting reduced in quality? I hate to break it to you, but social media sites will always reduce the quality of your videos through compression. You're just gonna have to get used to that. Whether you compress it in Premiere Pro or once you upload it to Instagram, either way it's getting compressed. So edit and export from Premiere Pro in the quality you're happy with. I personally just do high quality 1080p preset in Premiere, and then I match source the aspect ratio. But then once exported, I then upload knowing that it will never look exactly how it did on my computer. Luckily though, everyone else is uploading to the same quality reducing platforms. But the important part that will make a difference in the overall quality is in your Instagram settings, click on accounts, then go to data usage and make sure you have toggled on upload at highest quality. If you don't have this toggled on, then if your internet speed is slow, it will reduce the quality in order to allow you to upload your videos quicker. So make sure that's toggled on, and that will give you as good of quality as Instagram can muster. And as a bonus tip for you, distribution is queen. If content is king, distribution is queen. This refers to things like using hashtags, using a good cover photo or thumbnail, posting during a certain time of day, posting on certain days, posting a certain frequency, and posting consistently in general. All these little things will increase the likelihood of your videos getting seen. So go look at your analytics to see when your viewers are most active. For me, it's in the mornings around 9 a.m., so that's when I try to post. For me, there's no specific day that people are more active on Instagram. And I personally don't take the time to do hashtags, though I'm sure it can help. Probably the most important part of good distribution though is consistency. Algorithms love to see regular activity. For example, I went a couple months without posting much on Instagram, maybe only once or twice in that time. And for the first time in years, I started losing followers rather than gaining. So I set a goal to at least post once a week. And after doing that for 3 or 4 weeks, the algorithm gods smiled upon me and my daily followers started regularly going back to positive. I think once a week is a good baseline to try and shoot for if you want to grow a following and stay relevant to your audience. Ideally, you post more than that. And if you don't see great results after a few weeks, be patient. Stay consistent. Learn from your mistakes and successes and pivot your content each week based on what's doing well and what's not doing well. And keep in mind that there is a variable of randomness to this virality game. Sometimes what it takes for a post to go big is that one specific person with a large following happened to see it and share it, and that's what gives it the initial push to start spreading. But you can't predict or bank on that one big person to share it. So don't get frustrated trying to nail this down to a science. Some posts will fall flat, some will take off, and there won't always be a specific rhyme or reason to it. Don't let that discourage you from continuing to create. And on that note, educate your clients as well when you're doing reels for them that virality is a random game. And I would brainstorm 10 variations of the same piece of content with your client, making a bunch of different hooks, and then in the editing room, I'd pump out a variety of edits with different styles and approaches. So there you have my tips on how to get more views on Instagram Reels and TikToks. Obviously, you don't have to do all of these on every post. These are just some general principles to keep in mind as you're creating. Also, I did an interview with my buddy Tanner Townsend, who grew his music Instagram TikTok following from 2,000 followers to over 100,000 followers in just a matter of 2 months. And then shortly after, he grew his dad's business account from 13,000 followers to again over 100,000 followers in just 2 months. And he explains how he applied the principles mentioned in this video to do it. So if you'd like to see that interview, it is reserved exclusively for full-time filmmaker members. Link below to check that out to get access to over 600 tutorials to help you grow your business. Lastly, don't forget to subscribe for more content just like this. And if you have any further questions, please let me know.